Welcome back, guys. We got another one for you. I'll show you what we got. Alright guys, so I mentioned before in one of the previous videos that I wanted to build a shelf above the lathe that would hold all of my tooling and tools, you know, stuff like that I'm using while I'm machining. I get tired of this mess. I get tired of the chaos. So I want to build a shelf up here, and obviously it's not going to be clear over here because I don't want to be reaching over the chuck. But it'll probably go somewhere right here to here. So it's going to be, you know, 30, I think I measured 34 inches wide. And I want to make it custom built for all the tools I use. So all this stuff is going to have a home. It'll have a place where it can hang. These are all tools that should have a home. Anything that lives at the lathe, I want it to have a home up there on that shelf where it can hang. And then on the top, I'm going to build it out of steel because on the top I want to be able to put all my tool holders up there while I'm machining, and I want to be able to, you know, snap my magnetic base for my dial indicator. I can set it up there. I don't have to worry about it getting tipped over and broken or something like that. We're going to do some brainstorming on this one. There's a few ideas that I have that I think will make it more user-friendly, and it'll kind of clean up the chaos here. So on the top of the shelf, I think I want to put in some random holes for, you know, screwdrivers, Allen wrenches. I think it would be cool to put in some holes where I can set my live center up there. These actually just kind of live here, and I think it would be a lot better if they had a home up here where I could just set them in there. So, you know, oil can, it's always sitting right here, but I think I've knocked it off there about 3,424 times. So it would be nice to be able to put it up on the shelf. It's got a home. It's out of the way where it's not going to get knocked over. That's kind of my plan for this one. So right now I'm just going to brainstorm. I'm going to pull some measurements, and then I'm kind of a visual person, so I like to take a notepad and I like to draw out my idea, draw my measurements, put dimensions, and then just kind of start brainstorming. What if I put this cut out here and this one here? So that's kind of what I'm going to do now. There's really not too much for you guys to see, and I'll see if I can figure something clever out here, and then we'll go from there. Let's do it. Alright guys, so here's what I got. So I drew this up, and you can see that I drew it up because there's lots of scribbles here. And what we've got is, this is going to be the back plate, and I'll break these in, and then this will be the top plate that will weld in there. It would have been nice to be able to break this part over the top, but I don't have a break that's 42 inches long, so sometimes you got to make do with what you have. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to burn this piece, we'll break either side, we'll cut the top piece, we'll TIG weld that on there. I'm going to put some holes in it where the studs are so that I can lag bolt it into the studs, because it's going to hold, you know, a significant amount of weight. You get a few tool holders on there, those chucks, a live center, an oil can. I mean, that stuff all adds up. So it's probably going to be holding, I don't know, 50, 60 pounds of weight. So I'll have 2 holes burned in there for the studs, 24 inches on center. And then the top plate, I'm just going to kind of play with that on the software and decide where I want holes where I can put different tools and what size holes and all that stuff. I did draw up a couple hooks. These hooks I'm gonna draft in the software, and I'll burn them on the table, and then I'll be able to weld them up underneath the shelf, and that way the hammer and the T-handles and all that stuff, they'll be able to hang up under the shelf, and I think that'll save room on the top. Plus it'll also look nice and keep everything where it's got a home. So I'll go over to the burn table and start drafting this up, and we'll see how it goes. All right guys, so we got our 10 gauge plate loaded on the table. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these parts burned, and then we'll get the parts over on the table, clean them up, start fitting it. Maybe we'll get to the point where we can start mounting it tonight. So let's see what we can get done, and we'll give you guys an update once we get the parts burned and over on the table. We'll all be dipped. Look who's out here working. Oh, son of a gun. Finally got these people to work. So while they're cleaning the lathe, we're gonna come over here and we're gonna keep prepping this. Got these cut out, added my own little touch there. I'm gonna prep these, go ahead and clean them up, knock the dross off, and we'll start figuring out how we want to lay all this out. So let's go to that point. All right guys, we got these all cleaned up. So now I'm gonna lay this out. I gotta pull 5 inches off the end and make my marks so that I can go break this. So I'm gonna pull my measurements, make my marks, and then we'll go over to the break and we'll break this. Okay, so I pulled my measurement. I'm 32 inches from line to line, which is right where I wanted to be. Now, when I break this, it's not going to be exactly. You have to compensate. You either need to deduct the thickness of the plate to the inside, because when you break it, it's going to grow the thickness of the material. So what I'm going to do is when I go over to the break, I know my break well enough to know where to put the knife on my line to get the right offset. So I'm not going to offset with the measurement, but typically if you've got a really good press brake that has a die with 4 sides that you flip depending on what size of material you're braking, then you want to get more accurate with it. But the brake that I have is not super accurate, so I'm just going to deduct a little bit because I know where the offset is on my brake. So that's how I'm going to do it. This is for all those people who just can't stand to see somebody else succeed or somebody else prosper. This is for all those people who just can't stand to keep it in and not say something demeaning. The negativity and the hate, all that does is fuel the fire for people like me. My hope is that when people watch this segment, they can take what we've talked about and use it in their life to give them ambition, to follow their dreams, but also I think we can also learn to support each other and to be happy for each other. And I also think sometimes it's okay to keep your thoughts inside your head. They don't always have to come out your mouth. So this is a segment dedicated to all those people I'd like to call fabricators. All right guys, so for today's fabricator, let's dive right into it. This one comes to us from the pistol slide video, and I have to say that video has given me more material for the fabricator segment than any other video I've done. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the fact that it was work on a firearm or what, but I have had numerous hater comments on that video, and it's probably due to the fact that that project did not go extremely smooth. Anyway, let's go ahead and read this one and we'll go from there. So this week's fabricator, and I mean this when I say it, this comes to us from Dixie Normus. That's literally what it says here, Dixie Normus. I think maybe he got his wires crossed and those words are swapped. Anyway, wow. With so many good videos out there on how to properly do this, it's good to see one on how to improperly do it and ruin a several $100 slide. Well, thank you. I'm not sure whether to be offended or honored. You know, the thing of it is, I think a lot of people like to tear other people down because when you put yourself out there for the public to see what you do, I think they fully expect that everything needs to be perfect. And the fact of the matter is, that's about as far from the truth as it could be. Not everything is going to be perfect. Not everything goes smooth. We'd all like to believe that every time somebody comes walking through my door with a project, that it's going to go silky smooth and everything's going to be great. There's going to be no complications, but that's just not the way it is. And I believe that it's that way by design because our mistakes are what make us smarter and stronger and better. And they're what make us learn and progress and all those things. And honestly, the pistol slide video, I had never machined a pistol slide before. That was my first one. And there was a lot of unknowns in that one, and I went for it. It was for somebody I know. I wouldn't have just done it for somebody off the street that said, hey, can you do this? It was for a friend of mine, and I actually tried to tell him no at first, and he just said, I'm not worried about it. I want you to try it. If you screw it up, it's no big deal. And I went for it. And it didn't go as good as I would have liked. But here's the thing. Ultimately, those projects that sometimes we struggle through are the ones that make us learn the most. It would be great if everyone in their profession had it figured out to where they never made mistakes or everything went perfectly smooth, but that's just not the case. I do think it's necessary to make the mistakes and struggle and go through all those things in order to learn and grow. Pretty much anything you do where you're going to put yourself out there and you're going to stretch yourself and you're going to do something that's a challenge, you're going to have times where you fail. You're going to have times where you screw up, and you can either decide to scrap it or you can decide to cowboy up, get back on, learn from your mistakes, and keep moving forward. And that's the only option I have. I think it's important for all of us to know that we're going to make mistakes, we're going to screw up. There's things that we're going to do throughout our careers and throughout our jobs and all those things where we're not completely comfortable doing certain things, but that's how you learn. Sometimes you just have to push yourself. You have to force yourself to figure it out. And ultimately, in the end, you're going to be better for it. So I think that's what we'll walk away with on this one. So let's take that with us. Let's try to be better. Don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because that's what makes you better. That's what makes you learn. That's what makes you progress. And that's what's going to give you more skill the next time. Let's get back to the project. Alright guys, so I want to show you something. As you can see, this side is overbroke just a little bit. To get the right crease on that brake, you got to go all the way down, and that doesn't have a die that caters to the material thickness, so it just is what it is. For that type of brake, we're doing the best we can. So it did overbreak it a little bit. I want to show you guys how I make up for that when I overbreak something like this. So what I'll do is I'll just take it on the edge of my table here to where the corner is sticking up, and then I'll just hit it right on the corner. I'll check it with a square. Awful close. Okay. Now we're nice and square. Sometimes you just got to massage it. In a perfect world, yeah, they'd be perfectly square, but I don't have a perfect brake, so that's just what you have to deal with sometimes. Now we're ready to fit the top plate. So my top plate's gonna fit right here, and it should give us a perfect open corner. I'm pretty happy with the joint. I'm gonna get the Dynasty rolled out and set up, and then grab a couple clamps and we'll start fitting this. Alright guys, so I want to show you something real quick. If you look at my joint, you can see this leg is sticking just a little bit in, but our corners are about perfect. Gives me a nice open corner on both sides. So all that means is these legs are just a little bit over broke. That's okay, I'll be able to pull them out and tack them in place. Plus you can see there's kind of a bow in this, so as I push this bow in, that's going to help bring these out. I'm pretty happy with my measurement there. That's exactly the joint I was looking for. So now I'm going to get some tacks on my corners first, and then I'll start working my way out from there. So that's what I'm going to do now. So we'll go into time lapse and we'll start tacking this and fitting it up. I like to put a tack about every 6 inches on stuff like this. We'll get it all tacked up, weld it out, and once we get that welded out, the main structure of the shelf, then we'll come back and I'll show you guys what I got in mind for some other stuff. Alright guys, give you guys a look here. Turned out good. Dynasty's running crazy. Purring like a kitten. Okay, so now that the structure's all welded out, here's what I want to do. I've got these little hangers that I burned on the table, and I want to weld them up under here. I've got 2 here that are going to hold my hammer. I've got 2 here that are going to hold one of my T-handles, and I got another 2 here to hold another T-handle. So I got to figure out where I want to put them, where they're not going to be in the way of something. I'm just going to go ahead and lay these out. I'm going to pull my measurements, make some marks, and then I'll just go ahead and tack those and get them welded out. We're just going to TIG them on, and then I'll give you guys a look.
Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it out tonight. We gonna let it out, babe. Tonight we gonna let it out just like the sunrise. We gonna let it out now. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now.
Alright guys, we got this all welded out. This was actually some pretty good practice. These are so narrow, it was tough getting in there. And half of them I had to do left-handed. It's good to get practice welding with both hands, because there are times where you may have to weld left-handed. So, alright, that's done. We're going to clean it up a little bit more, and then we're going to be ready to mount it. So I'm going to clean it up a little bit, and then we'll get it over there by the lathe and start setting it up. My wall is a little bit warped. Okay. Oh yeah, she's level. All right, now it's time to start loading her up. Here we go. Alright guys, we got it wrapped up. So here's what we got. Place for most of my lathe tools. We got hangers so we can hang everything. Everything's got a home. I was trying to think of how I could utilize space underneath here and be able to hang some things. I'm not too sure if I like this yet, just because it has to hang down below the back of the lathe. But I do like that concept. I think it turned out pretty good. You can see the logo in there, kinda, sorta. But it's nice to be able to have a home for things. This is one of the funnest parts about having a shop, in my opinion. You take it and you make it yours. You organize it the way you want, you set it up the way you want, and what functions for you. Stuff like this I really enjoy. So I think this is gonna work good for us. I like that it's taking the clutter away from on top of the lathe. I do have some tools I gotta put away, but once I put these tools away, there's really not gonna be much there. That way I can use the top of the lathe for when I'm machining and I'm swapping out tools. I can set them on here and I don't have to worry about this big pile, this big mound, heaping mound of stuff in my way. So I think it's gonna work good. Appreciate you guys watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you on the next one. Test, test, 1, 2, test.